what's the first step in developing a Lean Six Sigma deployment plan?
All right, so let me just tell you where we start with an engagement. We start at one of two places. We have a lot of people that will call us and they're interested in doing something.
Right.
Most of the time when you get a call from mid-management, there's somebody really trying to do something right, but they want to have somebody come and give them 10 days of training. And again, there's people out there that will do that. I don't know how to do that and be successful at it. What we look for is where we're going into the organization, and if where we go into the organization isn't got enough leverage to get the organization to behave nicely. And just for an example, if you're only going into ops, you got to make sure that the people in engineering, the people in customer service, the people at least will play nicely and share information and be willing to participate in projects. Because if you don't have that kind of thing, you're going to lose. But we look for one of two things. One, do we have access to high enough level of leadership to get that kind of leverage across silos? Or the other thing we look for is I have a partner that I'm blessed to have worked with since the late 80s as well. His name is Rich Schroeder. And Rich Schroeder is probably the number one person of going into a leadership team in the world and getting them to do things they wouldn't normally do on their own. He knows how to coerce them, how to talk to them, how to show them where the money is, that sort of thing. So if I have an opportunity that Schroeder's vetted out, I go in there and we're ready to go because I know he's vetted it.
Yeah.
If we don't, we go in there and we get access to a high enough level to where we can access to silos, and we make sure that everybody is willing at least to have a frank discussion.
Okay, so let me pause you there for a moment. So the first step is you need to make sure you have the right leverage in the organization. If somebody who is a manager 5 levels down in operations says they want to implement it at the organization and they call you up, you're gonna look at it and you say, well, if the operations manager across the company isn't bought into this, then she or he is not going to drive the kinds of actions that you need in the organization in order to deploy it. So the first step in the deployment plan is determining if you have the right leverage within the organization.
Right. And, just a little bit different and probably nuanced from what you said. If somebody from the middle organization engages us, we will give them all the time in the world. In two ways. One is if it doesn't require us to get on a plane and go sit in their facility for 2 weeks, we'll give them any help they want. But the other one is we'll go and talk to them about how to get leverage or how to make introductions and see if we can get those introductions. But anybody who calls us is willing to learn. We try to help learn. Always been that way since the day we started at Motorola. If anybody is willing to learn, we try to help them.
Great. I'm glad you clarified that, because there's a difference between having successful Lean Six Sigma projects in an organization and even having it in a part of the organization and then having it deployed across the entire business, which is the focus of this interview. And so I just wanted to clarify, we're talking about a deployment plan across either a major business unit or across an entire business like a GE, which at the time of the deployment had, I believe, 14 core businesses, one of which was GE Capital, which had 26 businesses in itself.
Right.
And so we're talking about a deployment plan that could either be on one of the GE Capital businesses, let's say, or in the case of what you did at GE, across all of the GE businesses.
Correct.
Okay.
And we actually, my friend Mike Carnell and I had 8 of the GE businesses. We didn't do them all, but we had 8. But yes, absolutely, we're looking for that type of involvement because work doesn't take place in silos. It takes place across silos. You got to have that engagement.
Definitely. And if you don't have that type of engagement, you'll bring in somebody like a Rich Schroeder, and then you'll try and create that engagement within the organization?
We would do that, yes.
Okay. So that's the first step of the deployment plan. What comes after that? Assuming that you can get engagement, what comes after that?
We take a fairly, as detailed a look as they'll let us take. We have to get certain amounts of data. What do you know about your business? What do you know about your strategic plan? Explain to me why your strategic plan is rational. Let's start with that. A lot of people will have hope out there in their strategic plan, But how is your strategic plan rational? Show me the data you have. If you don't have data, let us go get data with you. And when we really get ready to, we have a lot of people have something they call an assessment. But we will go in, if we're going to go into GE Capital, for example, or one of their businesses, we will go in and take a hard look at their core processes, 1, 2, 3 of, it depends on what the company is, how many core processes they have. But we'll look at their financials and see what their financials say about results and where money should be. And we'll go look at the process as it runs and see if we see the money there, see if there's a matchup of what's going on there, so we can have an estimate of what's going on here. A lot of people like to start, and if you read a lot of the early stuff from Dr. Harry, for example, you start a project and you go figure out the financial results. We try to turn the equation on us here. We try to know what the financial result looks like and see how much of it we can capture with project work that can be observed. Mm-hmm. But that would be our next step, is let's go get some data. Let's go make sure the strategic plan's in line, and then let's go look at the key processes involved in that and see what we can discern from them in a quick look. We don't take a long time to do that I told you assessment. In a week's time, I can look at the financials, I can look at the key process they want to look at, and I can see if there's a rational story there, yes or no.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So the second step is to basically perform an assessment, gather the data through core process evaluation, the financial statements, and then estimate that gap. Estimate what the improvement potential is, which you would then quantify in financial terms for the company.
Absolutely, but we would state what the project would be, but we tell them what the money available to them is. We don't ever try to go for all the money or all the improvement, but we go with the standard Motorola thing. We tell them what happens if you get 68% improvement, because I know from experience I can get 68% improvement on any process if we're not trying to violate the laws of physics.
That's always a good thing. All right, so you've done your assessment, you've quantified that potential, then what do you do?
Well, we go one of two ways. A lot of times in companies, there's a lot of doubters. Mm-hmm. We've tried this before, it doesn't work. I've got this process over here that can't be fixed. And I would tell you more often than not, we get those kind of things. So the first thing we'll do once we have that bit of data in our hands, mm-hmm. if there are detractors, we'll go in there and go and show them how to fix that process. Mm-hmm. And we'll take on any process they got. Again, one of the things that we've got several. But we've got, it's not unusual for us to see a 40-year-old problem that can't be fixed and go fix it in 3 months. But we show them how to do it, because usually it's a measurement system problem or a data problem. Mm-hmm. And so we fix that and we show them how to fix the problem. So we'll do that. Or if there are real believers in the crowd that they understand that this opportunity is here, and we see that a lot with people who have come out of GE or P&G, or any of the myriad of other companies that have seen this happen before. A lot of people know, and so we'll go into actually, okay, how do we educate your resources in the right way and give them the experience in the right way, so that 2 years from now they can run their own program and have people that are capable of looking at a process, looking at the financials, knowing there's an opportunity here, go structure the project and go run it. So we either demonstrate it to them, or we go ahead and start, because there is an adequate amount of buy-in there.
Yeah. All right. So there's the old saying, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man a fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. So what you do is you'll go in there and you'll give them the fish. You'll fix the problems that they may have had plaguing their company for 40 years that nobody, even their fantastic engineers or business leaders have had, that they just haven't been able to fix. And looking at it with the Lean Six Sigma methodology, you'll be able to fix it and bring some detractors, either neutral or positive. And then you'll also look at who needs to be trained so that they can go and do their own fishing and improve their own processes.
Right, absolutely. And I'm going to get in trouble with my friends, and they help me run this business, but we take it a step further. We don't just teach people to fish, we instill a love of fishing in them.
Love it. Okay. And so we've got the engagement, we've got the assessment, we've quantified the gap, we've fixed some problems in the business, so we've got some quick wins, and then we're also educating. What else? What's the next step in the deployment plan?
Well, we will, at that point, we'll start going for the mid-levels of management, mm-hmm. to make them aware of what we're doing, how we're doing, why we're doing, how we're going to measure things. We will also try to affect how they measure their own business. If we find a company that is out there measuring 40 things and not focusing on them, we'll try to get them to cut the list down. If they don't have good measurements of the things they say they reward people on, we try to straighten that out. If we see a mismatch between their strategic plan and how executives get compensated. We try to straighten that out, but we'll try to straighten out the measurement systems around there. And we'll start educating from the gap between the C-suite and the people we're actually out there trying to teach as change agents. We have in the past missed the first line leadership, and we have made a concerted effort in the last 10 years to hit the first line leadership too, because that's where a lot of it can either be reinforced or destroyed immediately, especially with lean. You know, one of the things that I tell everybody about lean is a simple set of tools that's easy to teach, but it's really hard to implement. And the reason why it's hard to implement is you can do all the right things, and the first time you make a decision for convenience at 3 in the morning or at the end of the quarter or at the end of the month or whatever, as soon as you've done that, you just destroyed everything you've done. And so that first line of defense is how do the first line leaders react when there is a problem? There is a reaction plan that says we are lean, we do these kind of things. How do we instill that knowledge in these guys, and how do we instill that belief in these folks? So we'll go after those folks, but it's the entire gap between there. But we focus on first line leadership for sure early on, and we focus on the measurement systems that reward or punish people and make sure those are lined up.